Response to King Yaakov's video, Lunar Sabbath Nuked, Part 8, Heart of the Earth. Hiram yashra'al, servant of Yahuwah and of the Master Yahushua HaMashiach, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad in the captivity, greetings. Shalom, brothers and sisters. We are going into part 8 of our series, and really the last 3 parts of this go together. I'm going to be doing the heart of the earth, the third day resurrection, and then finally the first fruits wave sheaf. And so parts 8 and 9 lay the foundation for part 10. And part 10 is what many of you have been waiting for, because it's the part in which I said that I'm going to prove to you that Aviv 15, the 15th day of the first month, first day of unleavened bread, will always be a weekly Sabbath every year without exception. So, without any further delay, let's get into this here. I'm going to be moving rather quickly, so if I'm moving too fast for you, please pause the video, take down the notes, whatever you need to do, but we're moving on. So, with the heart of the earth, the first point I want to make is that there is no clear scriptural link of the heart of the earth to the grave, because that's what it is interpreted as. As I read the verse here in Matthew chapter 12, verse 40, the word reads, "For as Yonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the stomach of the great fish, so shall the Ben of Adam be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." And so the heart of the earth is assumed to be the grave by many, if not most people, either the grave or the underworld, Sheol. And that can go either way. But brothers and sisters, there's no clear scriptural link to that. If you look up that phrase throughout the scriptures, that we never see that referring the heart of the earth, referring to the grave or the underworld. Now, I haven't seen it myself. If you see it, then please message me and let me know, but I have not found it. Now, the second point that I want to make is this, that we have to look at the language of Matthew 12:40, where it says that as Yonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the stomach of the great fish, so shall the Ben of Adam, the Son of Man, be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. And so we have to understand that there's more to it than just 3 days and 3 nights. That it said that as he was, so shall the Son of Man be. In other words, their experience is going to be the same. It's going to be a parallel experience, that what Yonah faced when he was in the belly of the whale, belly of the great fish, and his circumstances, what he experienced, that was going to be the same thing that the Son of Man was going to experience 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. I believe that's the most important point of this video here. Now, let's see what Yonah experienced. In Yonah chapter 2, we're going to read verses 1 through 7. The word reads, "And Yonah prayed to Yahuwah his Elohim from the stomach of the fish, and he said, I called to Yahuwah because of my distress. And he answered me from the stomach of the grave, I cried," or the stomach of Sheol. "I cried, and you heard my voice. For you threw me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the flood surrounded me. All the breakers and your waves passed over me. So I said, I have been driven away from your eyes. Would I ever look again toward your Kodesh Hekal? Waters encompassed me unto life. The deep closed around me. Weeds were wrapped around my head. I went down to the base of the mountains. The earth with its bars were behind me forever. But you brought up my life from the pit, O Yahuwah, my Elohim. When my life fainted within me, I remembered Yahuwah, and my prayer went up to you into your Kodesh Hekal." So brothers and sisters, this is what he experienced. But I want to call your attention to the very first thing he mentions in verse 2, which is his distress. Yonah was in great distress when he was in the stomach of this great fish. Now, the references to going down to the base of the mountains with the earth with its bars behind him forever and down into the pit, that brothers and sisters, I believe that Yonah used this language symbolically to describe how he was on the edge of death. I don't believe Yonah literally died. There is a school of thought out there that says that Yonah literally died and was brought back to life. But I don't believe that. I believe he was speaking of being brought to the point of death, but not actually dying. Now, let me give you a couple verses to show you why I believe that. If we turn to Psalm chapter 86, what we're going to see is that in David, in his distress, he used some of the same language. All right, in Psalm chapter 86, verse 13, he said, 12 and 13, I praise you, O Yahuwah my Elohim, with all my heart, and I esteem your name forever. For your kindness is great toward me, and you have delivered my being from the depths of the grave, the depths of Sheol. Okay, Daud said this, you've delivered my being from the depths of Sheol. Now, 116. And I'm going to start in verse 1. It said, I love Yahuwah because he has heard my voice and my pleas, because he has inclined his ear to me, and I shall call throughout my days. The cords of death were around me, and the pains of the grave, the pains of Sheol came upon me. I found distress, remember, distress. I found distress and sorrow. Then I called upon the name of Yahuwah. O Yahuwah, I pray to you, deliver my being. Very similar circumstance with Daud. And so he uses similar language just to show how he was brought to the point of death, but he didn't literally die. And so I believe the same was the case with Yonah. Now, point 2 I want to bring out is how that the Messiah's experience, 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth, it mirrored Yonah's experience. In other words, that it was very similar to what Yonah went through. This is why that the Messiah said, as Yonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. It wasn't just the time frame he was talking about, but the circumstance that Yonah was in the belly of that fish. Now, let's turn to Psalm chapter 22. Those of us who are Messianic and filled with the Ruach HaKodesh, that we believe that Psalm chapter 22, that Daud spoke this, but through the Ruach, he was speaking some things that pertained unto the Messiah that was to come. So, in Psalm chapter 22, verse 1, and this is an obvious one, my all, why have you forsaken me, far from saving me in the words of my groaning? So we as Messianic believers, we believe that this was the Ruach speaking through him and speaking things that pertain unto the Messiah to come. But if we jump down to verse 6, I'm going to read verses 6 through 8. It says, but I am a worm and no man, a reproach of men and despised by the people. All those who see me mock me. They shoot out the lip. They shake the head. He trusted in Yahuwah. Let him rescue him. Let him deliver him, seeing he has delighted in him. So look at the mockery, the mockery that is being faced here. And we know that is foreshadowing the mockery that Yahushua himself went through when he was on the stake. Now, verse 11, it says, do not be far from me, for distress, remember, distress is near, for there is none to help. Many bulls have surrounded me. Strong ones of Bashan have encircled me. They have opened their mouths against me as a raging and roaring lion. I have been poured out like water, and all my bones have been spread apart. apart. My heart has become like wax. It is melted in the midst of my inward parts. My strength is dried like a potsherd, and my tongue is cleaving to my jaws, and to the dust of death you are appointing me. For dogs have surrounded me. A crowd of evil ones have encircled me, piercing my hands and my feet. I count all my bones. They look, they stare at me. They divide my garments among them, and for my raiment they cast lots. But you, O Yahuwah, do not be far, O my strength. Hasten to help me. Deliver my life from the sword, my only one from the power of the dog. Save me from the mouth of the lion and from the horns of the wild beasts. You have answered me. So look at the distress that Yahushua was going through at this time when he was being mocked and ridiculed and beaten, because we have to understand that there was a time, and we're going to go through this in part 3, there was a time appointed when Yahushua was handed over to this kind of treatment. Yes, he was being, mocked and ridiculed while he was teaching, but they couldn't lay hands on him. They couldn't really do anything to him until his hour had come. And so that brings me to point 3, where it says that the count, the 3 days and the 3 nights, the count begins when the Messiah's hour had come. And I say this because it's assumed that the count began when he died. And in the third day resurrection video, it's going to be part 9, I'm going to go into more detail of why we don't start the count at the time of his death. So, in Yochanan, or John chapter 2, we're going to move on to point 3, where the count begins when the Messiah's hour had come. You're going to see what I'm talking about by his hour coming. Now, in John chapter 2, and this is at the wedding of Cana, and verses 3 and 4 read, And when they were short of wine, the mother of Yahushua said to him, They have no wine. Yahushua said to her, Woman, what is that to me and to you? My hour has not yet come. So he said his hour had not yet come. And so, of course, he was speaking spiritually, and she was dealing with natural wine, but he was talking about his hour actually coming, when he would be delivered up and killed and raised again, and the new wine would be poured out. But she didn't understand what he was talking about. So chapter 7 of the same book, John chapter 7, and verse 30, it says, So they were seeking to seize him, Yahushua, but no one laid a hand on him because his hour had not yet come. All right, chapter 8. Chapter 8. And verse 20 says, These words Yahushua spoke in the treasury, teaching in the Mikdash, and no one laid hands on him because his hour had not yet come. So we have to understand there was a time, even when he was in Jerusalem, there was a time when he could not be touched because he wasn't given over into the hands of sinners yet. But as we move on to chapter 17, in John chapter 17, this is what is traditionally known as the high priestly prayer. In verse 1, it says, And Yahushua said these, and lifted up his eyes to the Shamayim, and said, Father, the hour has come. Esteem your Ben, your son, so that your Ben, your son, also might esteem you. So he was praying this prayer. Now, and this is the time that he went to the garden. And if we turn to Matthew chapter 26, which gives more detail about this time, in Matthew chapter 26 and verses 44 and 45, it said, And he left them and went away again and prayed the third time, saying the same words. This was when he prayed to the Father and asked that if it be his will, that the cup pass from him. All right, verse 45. And then he came to his Talmudim and said to them, Still sleeping and taking rest? See, the hour has come near, And the Ben of Adam, the Son of Man, is delivered up into the hands of sinners. 46, rise, let us go. See, he who delivers me up has come near. In verse 47, and while he was still speaking, see, Yahuda, one of the 12, with a large crowd, with swords and clubs, came from the chief Kohanim and the elders of the people. He said, the hour has come near, and that's the point at which he was delivered up to the hands of sinners. Now, Luke chapter 22. In Luke chapter 22, and when they did come out to capture him, this is what he said to them. Verse 53, he said, while I was with you daily in the Mikdash, you did not lay hands on me. They didn't because they couldn't. He said, but this is your hour in the authority of darkness. So, brothers and sisters, once again, it is this point right here that Yahushua was handed over to sinners, where he was delivered up, where his hour had come. And he didn't have that protection of the Father anymore. He was given into their hands. This is the point at which the 3-day and 3-night count starts. And so, as we go on to the next slide here, and I have a visual aid up here for you, that we have what I call the prophetic sequence. All right. What I mean by that is that each time Yahushua prophesied about what was getting ready to take place with him, he always included how he was going to be delivered up and then killed and rise again the third day. He doesn't just talk about being killed and raised the third day, but he includes the whole sequence of events. Now, I'm going to read a couple of these to you. I'm not going to read all of those. That you can pause this, take down the scripture references, and read all of this in your spare time. But to expedite the time, I'm just going to read a couple of them to you. In Matthew chapter 16, verse 21, the word reads, from that time Yahushua began to show his Talmudim that it was necessary for him to go to Yerushalayim and to suffer much from the elders and chief Kohanim and scribes, and be killed and be raised again the third day. Look at the whole sequence where he was delivered up and mocked, mistreated, then killed, then raised from the dead the third day. Now, chapter 17 of the same book and verse 23, verses 22 and 23, it said, and while they were still staying in Galilee, Yahushua said to them, the Ben of Adam, the Son of Man, is about to be delivered up into the hands of men, and they shall kill him, and the third day he shall be raised up. And they were deeply grieved. All right, and so I'm going to read one more, and then in your own time you can read the rest of those verses just to confirm what I'm telling you, that each time he prophesies about this, he includes the entire sequence. He includes the delivering up as well as being killed and raised the third day. And then verses 18 and 19 of chapter 20, see, we are going up to Yerushalayim, and the Ben of Adam shall be delivered up to the chief Kohanim and to the scribes, and they shall condemn him to death and deliver him to the Gentiles to mock and to flog and to impale. In the third day he shall be raised. So the entire sequence was prophesied. And so in the right column, here we have the sequence. I have night number 1. Now I'm starting with the night because he was delivered up in the night. Night number 1, he was delivered up. Day number 1, he was mocked and put on trial and eventually killed because he was killed between the evenings. Night number 2, he was in the tomb. Day number 2, he was in the tomb. Night number 3, he was in the tomb. And day number 3, he was raised from the dead. Now you may be saying, hey, hold up. That's only a small part of the day. That's not 72 hours. But in part 9, I'm going to show you why the 3 days and 3 nights did not necessarily have to be a full 72 hours. So I'm going to stop with that. We're going to move on. And with that, I will say, Shalom.